Hey, my name is Miranda Burns. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for coming along. You can already tell from the title of this video what we're talking about today. Before I start, I'm just going to really quickly say there are two reasons why I decided to make this video. Reason number one is because it's interesting. And I will own that. In my life, when people have found out that I have epilepsy, a lot of the time the first question they ask is, what is it like to have a fit? So I get the curiosity if you don't have it. Reason number two, arguably slightly more important, is that I hope that it might be beneficial. I mean, if you, at some point in the future, I mean, hopefully this doesn't happen, but if you do come across somebody who's having an epileptic fit, I think knowing maybe what they're going through might help you in some way. And it's also good just to learn about something outside of your own experiences. So yeah, now I have justified why I'm doing this, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm currently 26 and I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was around about 8 years old. The type of epilepsy that I was diagnosed with is called benign Rolandic epilepsy with temporal lobe spikes, which to this day, I struggle to say because I was diagnosed as a child. So my mum, she dealt with all the medical stuff. But yeah, that's what I had. I had my last seizure around about the age of 15 or 16. It was sometime during secondary school, which means I'm now like around about a decade free of fits. Thank God. So grateful for that. But I do still very vividly remember what it was like to have a seizure, because that is not the kind of thing that you are going to forget. So yeah, I'm going to share with you my experience. The most important thing, I guess, to say is that everyone has different experiences, and the thing which maybe distinguishes mine a little bit from someone else's experience is that I was conscious throughout my fit. So when I've met people who have epilepsy too, and I've asked them about their experiences, often they say, yeah, I feel the fit come on, I feel an aura, that's what people call it, like I feel the beginnings of a seizure start, and then I black out, and then I wake up and I'm on the floor and I'm looking at the sky. I never had that. I was always aware that I was having a fit, which, you know, is not the most pleasant of experiences, like maybe mildly traumatic, not nice as a child to have that happen to you and be aware that it's happening, but it does mean that right now I can make this video and explain to you what it genuinely feels like to have a seizure. You can kind of break it down into different parts. I think what I would say to you is, if you imagine right now in your head a very stereotypical image of somebody having a fit, that is what I looked like. My body would kind of convulse, I would shake, I would froth a bit at my mouth, my eyes would roll into the back of my head, and I was very much like a stereotypical seizure. But it didn't start like that. There was a moment of like maybe 10-15 seconds where it would get going and I would feel like I was about to have a fit, and that usually started in my tongue, which I know is weirdly specific, but my tongue would become heavy and kind of like almost buzzing. I know it feels weird, but if you imagine how big your tongue is in your mouth, you don't notice it on a day-to-day basis. When I was about to have a fit, all of a sudden the weight of my tongue would just like fill my mouth, and it would kind of feel like it was dropping back into my throat, and you get this sensation that you're choking and your breathing becomes irregular, and that alone is quite terrifying. I don't think it matters whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old. If you feel like you're out of control of your breathing, that's going to be like a really worrying thing to go through. So that's how it started, this like thick, heavy weight. I could kind of taste like iron as well, which I know again sounds weird because I never actually like bit my tongue. A lot of people, they will bite their tongues when they're having a fit. I didn't have that. So I didn't have blood in my mouth, but that sensation of like metal, hot metal sitting on my tongue, it sounds strange, I appreciate that, but it's just that's just what it felt like. So that was sort of the beginning of a fit. I could tell I had this 10 seconds of, oh my God, my tongue feels heavy, a fit is about to start. And that was like my warning period. It was the period of time that I had to either shout for help, which usually by that point I couldn't do because I'd lost the ability to speak, which again is like a really frightening thing. And I've only in this moment remembered that that was a thing. But yeah, I would like lose the ability to create words as my tongue got heavier. So rather than shout help or like mummy or something like that, I would just kind of make noises. So I would just go like, ah, and as loud as I could in that moment. I also used to try and bang on things, but as I come to the next point, you'll realise why that was difficult. But I would try and bang on stuff, just make a racket, try and draw attention to what was happening so that my parents could come and get me. Also meant if I was by myself and I was sat on a chair, I could take myself onto the floor, which is a slightly more preferable place to have a fit, because if you're in a chair and you lose control of your body, you're very likely to fall off the chair and then you could hurt your head, and that is not good. The reason why banging on something became difficult is because you would also lose control of your body. Now for me, this started at my head. So my face, like the front of my head, felt as though someone had got a fishing hook into it and was like yanking it to the side. And it was, do you know what? It was almost like someone was like twisting my head off my neck. Like it was rotating further than it should go. Obviously, I never was gonna like lose control of my head. It wasn't gonna like fall off my neck, but that was just like the sensation that I had. That was accompanied with your eyes starting to roll into the back of your head, which kind of impinged my vision, but my vision never went. I could still see things. It's just that I was seeing things from a kind of like strange perspective because my eyes weren't in the place that they were meant to be. But the combination of your head feeling like it's twisting off your neck and your eyes rolling back into your head makes you feel like you're falling. And that was a really distinctive, like, experience that I just had when I was having a fit. I always felt like I was falling. I felt like I was slipping off wherever I was sat. I felt like if I was in bed, there was this really particular moment where I was in bed as a child and I had my bedside table next to me, I guess kind of like this, and I felt as though I was slipping between the bed and the bedside table, and that I was getting trapped in that tiny little gap between it, which is the most horrifically claustrophobic and stressful thing to be in. And you know, in my mind I wasn't able to speak, but in my mind I was like begging my parents to like pull me up out of this gap, because I was like, I'm getting trapped, I'm stuck down here. And I asked them afterwards and they said, no, you were just lying on the bed. But I'm trying to get across to you, like, that is how like vivid and all-encompassing the sensation of falling was. I was convinced that I was falling down the side of the bed and I was getting trapped, and I wasn't. So that has always for me been a really like weird and kind of trippy thing that happens. But I guess your balance is off. Maybe that happens when your head starts to turn. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm just talking about my personal experiences. So I asked you to imagine like a stereotypical seizure like you might have seen on the telly. That is, I don't know, do you know, I always try and think what's the worst part of it. I don't know whether that is the worst part of it, but imagine losing complete control of your body. And I mean like complete control. I couldn't bang properly because I had lost the use of my limbs. They were starting to twitch. My tongue was starting to get full in my mouth, and my grip. You know when you wake up in the morning and you can't do this with your fist? Like that kind of really weird, disconcerting sensation. I would have that, but like everywhere. So the best I could do was kind of like flap a limb against something hard in the hope that it made a loud enough noise. The twitching quickly develops into like convulsions where you kind of become like rigid and then you relax and then rigid and then you relax. And if you're having a fit, I mean my fits lasted for probably about 60 seconds, but you imagine doing that really intensely for a minute. You're going to be so exhausted afterwards, and every time I had a seizure afterwards, that was it. I was gone. I was knocked out. I was so tired for hours afterwards, and I just have to sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. But yeah, those like shaking convulsions, they're quite a frightening thing to go through. The only thing I can kind of compare it to, and it's not even close, but you know when you have one too many drinks, and you come home, or like you go into a bathroom and you're by yourself for the first time, and the room begins to kind of like revolve around you and everything feels really unsteady. It's like there's a tiny little bit of what it feels like. Only small, because it's much worse having a fit, but that's just like to give you an idea, that like loss of control. Other thing that's a little bit weird is that I just lost all concept of time. So I used to think that my fits were lasting 30, 40 minutes, and then I'd get told afterwards that they were lasting, like 60 seconds, a minute 30, something like that. So that's, again, a little bit of a frightening thing, because although I was conscious and although I was very much aware that I was having a fit, I didn't have the ability to kind of track how long it was going on for. And often I would be in this fit, panicking, thinking, this has gone on for so long. Why has my mum not called like an ambulance? Why is there nobody here to help me? I've been trapped in this for sometimes like what felt like hours. So again, that's not like a particularly nice thing to get to go through. I could always hear though, that again was like a strange thing to experience, because most people, well, do you know what? I say most people. If you're watching this and you have epilepsy, or you know someone that has epilepsy and they are aware that they're having a fit, please can you comment down below, because I'd love to hear from you, because this is just off of my experience. Most people I've spoken to couldn't hear, couldn't see. But if you can, I would love to hear from you. Here, see what I did there, punny. But yeah, I could hear people speaking to me. I could hear people panicking around me if they weren't used to me having a fit. I could hear my sister, because often my fits would start at around about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I would kind of wake up, I would get that aura, my tongue would feel heavy, I could taste the blood, and I started to twitch. And we had bunk beds, so I was on the bottom bunk and my sister was on the top bunk, and I would kick my legs up between the slats at the top bunk and like push her, and she'd jolt. And I could always, she'd go downstairs, or at least like climb down the bunk bed, go down to my parents' room, and she'd be like, Miranda's having a fit. Because for her, it was so routine, like it was so normal, and I was always, I was poorly afterwards, but I was always okay. So poor little Ginny, who, let's say if I was 8 years old, she was 6 years old, her one job was just go downstairs and say, Miranda on a fit, and I can still hear her saying that, because I was aware, like I knew what was happening. Bless her cotton socks, I woke her up so much. Being able to hear is, I think, a blessing, because if you are aware that you're having a fit, and if you can see the ground bouncing up and down like towards your face as you're like shaking on the floor, to hear someone's voice tell you that, you know, you're okay, you're just having a fit, don't worry Miranda, I'm here with you, you're safe, don't worry, you're safe, that's like the one thing that could get me through to the other side. Now often I would have someone be like, oh, it's stopping, don't worry, it's like, don't worry, you're coming to the end of it, and then it would start up again. And I remember as well, being as a child, like being in the middle of a seizure and someone saying to me, don't worry, you're fine, and me being like, no I'm not, in my head, and being so irritated that someone could say to me, you're going to be okay, you're safe. I'm like, no I'm not, I'm having a fit and I can't move my arms and my legs are twitching. But on the whole, it's a nice thing to be able to hear someone encourage you and calm you and reassure you. So yeah, generally speaking, the hearing thing I think was a blessing. So I said briefly about my sister and her having to wake me up. So it was around about 2002 when I got diagnosed, but we're quite sure, I definitely am, and I think my mum is as well, that I was having fits for quite a while before this diagnosis, because I used to wake up in the night and I thought what was happening is I was talking to fairies. That is how I rationalised my experience. I'd be like, I'd wake up in the night and I'd be shaking, and I guess, I don't know, I was like, I'm speaking in tongues, so I'm like talking to fairies. And as a child who doesn't understand what epilepsy is, I guess magic is the next best explanation. So you imagine that's like my self-diagnosis. When this was all happening before diagnosis, officially, obviously mine was not official, and talking to fairies is not what epilepsy is. Before that happened, I would go to my mum and I would say, Mummy, sometimes I wake up in the night and I feel funny, and I'm just like, you know, it's like a weird kind of thing and I just feel a bit strange. And bless her, she said, well yeah, you're probably just having a funny dream. Like you would say to any child, you know, like, Mummy, sometimes I talk to fairies. Do you? That's wonderful, darling. Sometimes I talk to fairies too. You can see how there was like a little bit of miscommunication here. So the first fit that my parents ever saw, I woke up in the morning, again, 4 or 5 a.m. And I was like, right, that's it. I was like, this is the one. I know I'm about to speak to the fairies. I'm going to prove to Mummy and Daddy that this happens, because they didn't believe me first time. So I got out of my bunk bed, like doing the, you know, the tongue and the shaking and the twitch, like starting to lose control of my body. hindsight, wonderful thing. That was an incredibly dangerous decision on my part, because I wandered onto the landing to the top of the stairs, ready to go downstairs to my parents' room, and then quickly collapsed and started having a full-blown seizure on the floor. So thank God I didn't manage to make it onto the first step, because then I just would have toppled and I would have ended up outside their bedroom. So they would have found me eventually, but I probably would have hurt my head in the process. So yeah, at that point, I think my mum and dad realised that there was something a bit more serious going on, and the whole like talking to fairy thing wasn't just talking to fairies. It was like, we need to take her to a doctor. I was really lucky, because although I remember my fits as being like really frightening, and it's one of my biggest fears that they could ever come back, because there's nothing quite as terrifying in this world as having a seizure from what I've experienced. I was lucky because I was given a medication which really, really helped for me. So it was called carbamazepine or Tegretol, and I started taking Tegretol about a year after my initial diagnosis, and then I was on it for a really long time. Again, I can't really remember how long, because I was a child and I was just like waltzing through life, so my mum remembers the dates a bit more, but I was probably on it for maybe about 8 years, and it reduced my fits, it reduced the severity of them. Afterwards, I often projectile vomited and had really bad migraines. That kind of stopped. I just would be exhausted and I'd have to take the day off school, but I wouldn't be taking like 2 or 3 days recovering. So carbamazepine, very grateful to that. That saved the day. And I appreciate now, I'm speaking from quite a privileged position, because I'm able to talk to you about it and explain it retrospectively. I feel awful for anybody that has epilepsy. It's a really frightening and just like isolating thing to go through, and it can like really restrict the things that you're allowed to do, the experiences you can have. I used to always have fits at sleepovers when I was a little girl, which, you know, I found embarrassing. I had a fit in school. Apparently I had 2 fits in school, but I don't remember the second one, but my mum assures me that it happened, so I mean, I'm going to trust Celia's word. But yeah, that I just felt embarrassed, and like when I was saying, people would be like, oh, don't worry, you're going to be fine, and you can't speak, but in your head you're screaming at them, you're like, I'm trapped, I can't get out of this. So yeah, not enjoyable, not a nice club to be a part of. I'm very grateful for now, hopefully forever, to like have left it and be able to talk retrospectively. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up by saying I'm not a doctor, obviously. So I'm going to leave down below some links to websites that you can go to find out information, because there are first aid things that you can do. Obviously there's a recovery position which you probably know about, but yeah, do's and don'ts for treating someone who's currently having a fit or a seizure, and when to call the ambulance. So yeah, go and check those out. But yeah, I just feel really grateful that although at a time it was frightening, and at a time it did have a massive impact on my life and what I could and couldn't do, I'm now kind of like out the other side and can talk about it and, you know, make videos like this, which hopefully you found helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I might cover more of this on my channel at some point, because I don't think I've mentioned ever online that I had epilepsy. So I might do a couple more videos, so if you're interested in that, please subscribe, watch this space. But yeah, for now, thank you for watching and have a lovely day.